Good evening, everybody. I'm your president, Tony Tomasello, and we have a wonderful program brought to us tonight by Cheryl. Can I go back to the first slide, Cheryl?
Sure. Sorry. Hold on. There you
There
go.
we go. We have a wonderful senior regional sales manager for the Navico Group, Joe Pesci.
It's
I love the
peachy.
name. What is it?
Peachy, actually. Yes. Like the
Okay.
fruit.
All right. And he's going to talk about the latest in marine electronics. So we're in for a good program tonight. Next slide, please. I'm welcoming everybody who's online, and I understand we have about 25 people online. So welcome everyone, members and non-members. Next slide.
And anybody who's online, let's use the chat feature to enter your name and your town, state, country, or body of water, if you would, so we know where you're calling in from.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
So here's our board of directors. I'm Tony Tomasello. We have a vice president, Davis Jones, and an assistant vice president, Greg Pabst. Our secretary is Bob Thompson, and our treasurer is Carl Bart. Now, Carl just moved from Annapolis to Texas, and we have a assistant treasurer, Adam Yearwood. He's not listed here, but that's a big help. We have a vacant position. Our director of communication resigned, and we need to fill that position. We put an email out to the membership, and we're hoping to get somebody to fill that position and be a member of the board of directors. Continuing education, Mike Dillon. Our jobs program is Laura. She's the one that posts all the upcoming jobs, and apparently we're doing very well getting responses to those. Phil Gaither is our membership director. Programs, Cheryl Duvall, she's the one bringing us this program. Our webmaster is Dave Sire, and our members at large are Hillary Howes, Alan Karpus, and Robert Doolittle. And we do need more volunteers. We have an immediate need, as I said, for a director of communications. And we will be having our elections and our annual business meeting at Monday, December 1st at the Elks Lodge. And it'll also be on Zoom. But I would recommend that everybody attend in person. It's going to be a great meal. We're even having dessert this year. So it's going to be a great meal. And we'll have nominations for the board positions are being accepted. And you can go to the website there and read more about the positions and the elections. But really I would love to see more volunteers. Here are we have new members. In the past 6 months, we have 20 new members. And you can see in July we had 4. And please mark your calendar to attend our meeting on September 29th. That's an in-person program. And if you're there in person as a new member and you haven't yet received a gift, you'll be given a gift when you appear at the meeting in person. So we now have 344 members. And I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl now, and she's going to be talking about some things related to the boat show.
All right. So you do have opportunities to represent CAPCA at the boat show. Alan Karpus is our boat show chairman, and he is taking volunteers, and he is still looking for volunteers for both the powerboat show as well as the Annapolis sailboat show. So please reach out to him, send him an email, and let him know that he usually schedules some shifts. You never have to work the booth alone. There's always somebody else there, and some opportunities take breaks and walk around. So feel free to reach out to Alan if you're interested in volunteering there. We would love to have you represent CAPCA. There's also an upcoming class for CPR and AED for boaters on Saturday, September 27th. Also reach out to Alan if you're interested in registering for that. Programs. We have a couple coming up soon, but none in the month of August. So every year programs takes a break during August. We also don't have programs in November or December because of the annual business meeting that Tony just mentioned, which is our elections meeting. Our next program then is September 29th. We had one signed up, and they have needed to postpone to the beginning of next year. So the program committee, which is me, Bob Thompson, Hillary Howes, and Dave Oler, are in the process of narrowing it down and getting confirmation. So I'm not ready to announce who we have speaking in September. So just stay tuned for that. It will be on our website. I know a couple of you reached out when I mentioned this before with ideas. Thank you for your ideas, but we do have a couple things that are already in the works. But always welcome to hear your ideas on who we should have as speakers. On October 27th, this one has been confirmed, American Boat and Yacht Council, ABYC, a resource for CAPCA members. It is an excellent resource, and we're going to have Captain John Nash, one of our members, speak to this and let us know all of the things that we should be taking advantage of. So wanted you to know about that. That will be via Zoom. The one in September is our last in-person program for the year. So it will be on both September 29th will be both Zoom and in person. Now, this is hot off the press. We have two amazing tours coming up. One is September 9th, and I am still writing this up and getting it to our webmasters to post this. So registration will open August 1st. This is a tour of Poplar Island. It's an ecosystem restoration project. Many of you know that they have been dredging the Baltimore Harbor for decades. And since 2001, that dredge has been going to Poplar Island. I just recently toured it, and it is an amazing ecosystem. And all the photos you see here are from my camera when I was there a couple of weeks ago. So if you're wondering about it, it does. And I think I saw Amy Purvis on the call listed. Amy and her husband were able to be on this trip that I was fortunate to be on, and maybe a couple other people that I can't see here. So there is a van that takes you around. So I wanted you to see that, because if you have there is a little bit of limited walking, but if you have a little bit of mobility issues, as long as you can get on a boat and go across, and also come out and just walk a little bit, but they do take us on this boat, on this van throughout the island so that we can see all the amazing work that's being done. This is free, but we can only accept a max of 24 people. So just know, feel free to sign up as soon as you see it getting posted, and I'll write that up for the constant contact as well. You do have to arrive by 8:45 a.m., however, and that can be challenging to get to Tillman Island that early in the morning. So just think about that before you sign up. Then on November 12th, I've announced this one last month. We have now decided on the cost. The board decided last month the cost will be $50 because we have to cover the cost of the motor coach that will also tour us around this place, which is Trade Point Atlantic Marine Terminal in Baltimore. So we're very excited about this. This is limited to 30 attendees. In both cases, in both those tours, we will start a waiting list in case somebody has to drop off. So now with that, let us meet our speaker for the evening, Joe Peachy. Joe is a seasoned sales leader in the marine and fishing industry. He's currently serving as senior regional sales manager at Brunswick Corporation. Joe began his journey with Brunswick with the Navico Group in 2021 as regional sales manager. Before joining Navico, he spent 5 years as a manufacturer's representative, working with multiple companies across the marine and fishing sectors. His career began at On the Water Media, where he advanced from sales manager to sales director with over a decade of service. Having spent his entire life around boats, Joe brings a deep personal passion and understanding of the marine lifestyle to his professional work. Outside of the office, he enjoys spending time on the water with his family, embracing the very environment to which he has dedicated his career. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and allow Joe to share his screen. And it looks like his audio and camera is disabled. So webmasters, can we fix that for him? It was working just fine before.
You need to stop sharing. He should be able to get on now that you've stopped.
Now that I stopped. Okay, great. Excellent.
Joe, try it again.
And I know he did switch from that browser base to the app base.
There
We go. We can start seeing something.
There
Yep.
we go.
There we
All
go.
right.
It's up. But you're muted, Joe.
Can we unmute him? Or he has to unmute himself?
He has to unmute himself, but
And you made him co-host?
yes, I did. So he should be able to unmute himself.
It's not showing co-host on my side, but maybe it is.
Oh, yeah, you know what? He changed.
Ah, because he changed from
He
browser
Yeah.
base.
logged out and back in.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
There
That's
it
what
is.
happened, Joe. You logged out and back in and you lost all your credentials.
All right, you're
Problem
good.
You're all,
solved.
you're all set.
Well
now.
done. All right, we have good audio now.
Yes.
sir.
Very good.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all. I'm sure you guys bring a ton of experience to the table with everything y'all do. So we're gonna go over the latest in marine electronics. And to kick it off here, so we're gonna kind of walk you through who we are, being Navico Group, jump into multifunction displays, followed by AIS, then go over radar, and then end it with kind of all the options out there for basic navigation and charts and you know, what's available on the market. Let's see here. Oh. So prior to being acquired by Brunswick, we were Navico. Navico represented Simrad, Lowrance, B&G, and CMAPS. And then 3 years ago, we were acquired by Brunswick. Brunswick put us in their, what used to be their advanced systems group. And then they adopted our name being Navico, threw group on there. When people ask who I all work for, there's so many brands in there. Really, when you look at this picture of this vessel, if you take out the engine and you take out the fiberglass and the wood, we have brands that will cover every single thing from the electronics to the batteries to lighting to shore power management. So it's really everything except the fiberglass, the wood, and some of the other glass in the engines. Our bread and butter in that mix is our electronics. You see that B&G logo on the back? I can take that B&G logo, I can swap that with Simrad, I can swap that with Lowrance. We kind of cater to specific fisheries with our brands when it comes to MFDs. So B&G being sailing, Simrad being offshore, cruising, sport fishing, Lowrance being your inshore and freshwater base. So you're going to see a lot of slides in here with screenshots from our displays. The main takeaway here is when we look at Simrad and B&G, they could be the same exact looking display. You'll notice it's just the logo that looks different. That is true in the case where I can take a B&G unit and I can turn off all of the sailing features, can make it look just like a Simrad. We build extra software in there just for the sailing community. I can't do the same thing with a Simrad display. I can't turn that Simrad into showing ley lines, showing some of the advanced sailing features we do. So that's really how those two differ. So sometimes you'll see a Simrad display on a sailboat. They lost all that ability to have those advanced sailing features. Now jumping in with, y'all hear the word multifunction display. That gets tossed around everywhere now. And really what you've seen in the last 15 to 20 years is this shift away from your standalone radars, your standalone chart plotters, your standalone fish finders. Now, all these MFDs, they really are just limited by what they're plugged into, because MFD will run a radar, it will run various transducers, it will run various instruments, it will take in various data through your NEMA network. And that's across the board between Raymarine, Garmin, and us. When you get into your entry-level displays, that's really where, when we say standalone, it's standalone because it can't network, but most of those standalone units will run a sonar, they will run a radar. You can get basic NEMA data in, but you're not networking it to 10 different displays where you can pull up that radar on 10 different displays. And so when we say MFD, that is really what MFD stands for now. It's a multifunction display that's just limited by what it's plugged into. And auto routing, so auto routing We have our own auto routing that's based on our CMAP software. If you're on Garmin, now that Garmin owns Navionics, their auto routing is based on Navionics. Ray Marine went and bought their own charting company as well. Auto routing is based on the actual chart card and the integrity of that data that it's based on. So you need to have your hull length, your beam, your draft, and then it's going to compare that to where you want to go in the best applicable way. If you ask us at a show all about auto routing, because that's the biggest thing consumers want to know about, and even in your captain profession, it's a great resource, but it's not a tried, true, I'm just going to auto route and go right there. We compare it to when automobiles first got GPSs and folks were driving into rivers and lakes, and they said, well, how'd you miss that? It's like, well, my car told me to turn right, and I turned right and landed in a lake. You know, this isn't a perfect science. It should always be evaluated and looked at, and basically evaluated to make sure it's a safe route before you commit to navigating it, because there can be some, could be a shifting sandbar. Maybe there's something that that's there that's just not being reflected in the map. So here's an example of an auto route with all the new ones. You tap a button, mini chart comes up, and you just hit auto route there. And it's going to take you to the auto route. You'll see that that last leg of that course is in yellow. That tells us that it's caution. You're probably going over some shallow water. If it was red, it would be really dangerous. And you'll see the similar thing whether you're using CMAP on a Simrad display or Navionics on a Garmin, or even some of our older displays that will take Navionics cards. Same thing, chart inspector, hit, and it will take you there. And you can also do this at your home with whether you're using a Navionics app on your mobile device or a CMAP app. Here's a really cool one that you guys may have seen this on some commercial vessel applications. This is really the first time it's been available on consumer-driven MFDs. And what it does is it takes your vessel's information, and then it takes all the chart data. No matter what your speed, your zoom level, it's going to identify dangerous chart objects, and you have your harbor mode and your offshore mode. If you're navigating and there's something that it wants to warn you, you can see this cone in the top screen. You'll see that red portion. That's a super shallow area that your vessel is heading towards. And then you have the channel, and then it's a little less shallow on the other side. So that's orange being caution, you can get by there. But this will come up and throw alarms at you if you're going to come up to, say you're going to hit a dock, or you're going to a marina, or it's a sandbar. You'll get these big alarms now that will say, hey, danger, you need to look at this. We actually accidentally stumbled our way into an award at a big national boat show when the team was going around interviewing everyone. And then we brought this up, and they're like, oh, well, that's actually a new safety feature. We're going to put you in the safety category with our brand new display. And we actually got an honorable mention on it for it. So if you ever see this, it's pretty cool. You have to activate it. Home menu, just hit safety alerts, especially if y'all jumping on different boats. If you see any Simrad or B&G display, you can activate these as long as you're on the new software. And I'm sure you'll see this in Garmin or Ray Marine, because we've had a lot of good publicity with these features. This is just important to understand with our ley lines and sailing time and distance to waypoints. And this is specific to B&G, so we can turn this off and make it look just like a Simrad, but we can't do it from a Simrad to a B&G. So this actually takes your sailing angles, your upwind and your downwind to your destination on the chart. It's going to apply tidal corrections to ley line and calculations. So if you are on a sailboat that you're unfamiliar with and you hit a go-to cursor, it's automatically going to track your ley lines and tell you your optimal turns. And it's also taking in your wind, your speed, all that data that's on the network, and making it not simple, because I still couldn't do it, but it'll help you get there real quick and efficiently. So we look at chart overlays, and the big takeaway here is it's all based on what you're putting into the system. whether you're on a Garmin, Raymarine, or us, we all have our different chart overlays, and most of them are similar. When we look at AIS, we all show AIS data the same way. It's an overlay that's turned on and off. Sirius weather, you have to have two things with that. You have to have a Sirius module, then you have to have an active subscription. Same thing with the Sirius fish mapping. Radar overlay, you have to have a radar, and you also have to have a heading sensor. So all of these displays now have internal GPSs. The internal GPSs will show your fixed location when there's movement. When there's no movement, that's when you'll see your boat icon start spinning because it has no way to sense the orientation of your vessel. That's where we look at an external heading sensor. That external heading sensor tells the network and the displays, this is the orientation of my vessel at all times. And that's what the radar overlay needs in order to properly put that radar picture over your chart. And then the new one with the CMAT safety alerts. So we have Genesis Social Map. This is comparable to a Navionics Active Captain software. Both are really good options where you're actually using crowdsourced data and your own data to actually repaint your badly lines on a chart. And then the next three, bottom composition, vegetation, heat trails, just different options. I think heat trails is a new one that we added that's not in any of the other brands yet, but it's a really cool feature that will change your trail based on the water temp color, your water temp. So you can kind of go back and evaluate, and this is more specific to fishing if you're looking for specific temp breaks. But the biggest three is really AIS, radar, and probably the Sirius weather. That's what we get asked about the most on all of these. And then in sonar support, there's so many different transducers. Little known secret, AMR makes about 90% of the transducers for us, for Garmin, for Raymarine, for Furuno. They're the largest OEM transducer manufacturer. So it really just a matter of having the right plug, because you can buy that same transducer and you can have a Garmin plug, a Furuno plug, a Raymarine plug, our plug. It's just having that proper plug, because that's the one thing we haven't done is standardize the plugs yet, like NEMA has done. So it's still a matter of buying our plug. We started making displays in the last 2 years without internal sonars. One being on Simrad, it helps uncomplicate the network. So you don't have all these sonar sources that you don't need. And with B&G, we actually took it away on our newer ones, because most B&G customers don't need Fish Finder Echo mode. They're just using a NEMA network device for speed and depth. So for video and camera support, I mean, you guys probably seen all of these in your experience. They're all universal. They all will work with us, Raymarine, Garmin. We're all hoping, fingers crossed, that FLIR doesn't become exclusive to Raymarine, because it was recently purchased by the same company. So far, they're still allowing us and Garmin to play nice on FLIR. You have OmniSense, another big one out there that's coming along is Psionics, or just your generic IP cams where people use it for an aft cam, an engine cam, just to keep eyes on something that they can't while they're underway. And this is really a cool feature where, you know, you can take that same FLIR M200, you can plug it into us, Raymarine, Garmin. It's really nice because it allows you to get comfortable with operation, and it doesn't matter what display you're on. So you might see these on various vessels with different MFDs. Radars is the one catchy thing. We always get this question. Radars remain proprietary to the display. So whatever display you have, that's what radar you have to have. Most displays, and that's us, Ray, Garmin, we go backwards typically 3 to 4 generations. So like this display up here, this is our recent one that we launched this past year. We're going back 4 generations with our radar for backwards compatibility. So, you know, if the radar does fail and you're in a position where you need a new one, you have a lot of leeway there where you don't have to upgrade everything. It might just be swapping the radar. We all typically do that in the electronics world. So nice little insurance. And we're going to take a further deep dive into radars. So autopilots, You may have seen Garmin boats with Simrad autopilots. Typically, you don't see Garmin autopilots with Simrad or Ray Marine. The Simrad one is the one you see most common because Simrad acquired Robinson. This was probably about 20-something years ago, and Robinson was one of the leading manufacturers of autopilot systems, and they really had a very well-established name for themselves, especially in the commercial side of things. And that's really where we acquired and further developed our autopilot technology. The interesting thing that's happening in the industry right now is, see there's Mercury on there. So Mercury and Yamaha are both in the autopilot market. Yamaha started this 2 years ago with their new Yamaha EX engine, which is an electric drive movement. So you no longer have the hydraulic ram in the back. It's all electric. Once you have that engine, there is no autopilot outside of Yamaha's that will work with that engine. Mercury, they did the same thing. Any of their SmartCraft Connect Mercury motors, the newer ones with these joysticks, once you have that joystick, your only option is a Mercury pilot. And Mercury is doing that. Even we're part of the same sister company. They're owned by Brunswick's as well. And we still can't put one of our autopilot computers on that Mercury. So it's interesting to see where that's going right now. We're kind of curious to see when they're going to open up and allow outside autopilots to go with those engines again. And then we look at, like, this is an example of Mercury. So we can tie into Mercury, we can tie into Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, we can tie into a lot of the bigger inboard diesels. It's just about having that right converter to interpret and put that data onto your NEMA network. Any data-driven number transmits over your N2K, so your NEMA network. As long as you have that interpreter between the engine and the network, we can pick up all sorts of data from engine temperature, anything that it puts out there, we can pick up. So that's where you'll see, if you hop on a vessel, you'll see some analog gauges. Sometimes you hit your home menu, whether it's a Garmin, Ray, us, and you'll see an instrument page. If you hit that instrument page and you have data there, they've converted that and brought in some of that engine data into the network, and then you can really customize it to monitor exactly what you want to monitor. Now, fuel management has really come a long way. Whereas, back in the day, it was just our tanks were full, 3/4 full, quarter full, and then it was time to go get more fuel. Now we have NEMA fuel sensors, and all the big electronics companies make them. But we can take a fuel flow sensor now, drop it into the NEMA network, and now we can get more advanced fuel measurements. We can see our efficiency, we can see our fuel rate per hour. It's really nice to be able to evaluate, especially when you're on those long trips and you can see, all right, going against tide, I'm burning X amount. I'm going with tide, I'm burning this. And now you can take your average, especially on longer trips, to really analyze and make sure you have enough fuel. But and you can also see if you have issues too, because all of a sudden, if you're looking at multiple engines, one engine could be burning much higher than the other engine, and it can kind of trip you into getting that mechanic down to the vessel to further inspect and find a problem before it becomes a much bigger problem. This just, chart manager. We have our chart manager. Garmin has theirs for Navionics. You can do this on a Garmin display, especially the newer ones, or you can do this on our display with the CMAP store. Just shows where you can go in, buy updated chart data. So if you're in an area that you don't have the data, one cool feature that we do is you don't have to download the entire area. So if you're only interested in a small area, you can download that small area, so it saves on your download time and also cuts down on your cost. So and this is now if you have an audio source on the network, now you have all your audio controllers on the display, and this really comes back to just that MFD technology where it's all dependent on what you plug in, what controls you're going to have. So if you have a NEMA compatible Fusion head, JL audio, drop that into the NEMA network, you'll have full control on your MFD. And that's with us, with Raymarine, with Garmin. It's a pretty cool feature, especially if most of the head units for audio systems are below deck. So now you have your audio as a remote right on your MFD at your helm. Now we're going to jump into AIS. So you have your Class A, which is your big commercial ships, regulated, any commercial vessel, and I'm not talking like commercial charter boats, or it's your Class A designation. They have to have AIS. And then you have your Class B. Now with Class B, we look at two different styles: carrier sense, and that's the CST DMA, and then self-organizing, which is SOT DMA. I refer to them as carrier sense and self-organizing because I will get tongue-tied trying to say all those letters every time. Then you have your receive only, and then you have your internet-based AIS options. We're going to go through each of them, but the first important thing is to understand the difference of carrier sense and self-organizing. So the first biggest difference is your power output. With self-organizing, we're putting out 5 watts. With carrier sense, we're putting out 2. And when I say we, this isn't just our VHFs. This is based on what VHF you have, if it's carrier sense or self-organizing. So the biggest thing is right there off the bat with self-organizing, we're getting higher power. That means we're going to have more, we're going to have better communication. We're going to be able to transmit further, especially when you're out in the open ocean, compared to a carrier sense. So it's much more reliable. And then we look at the access scheme. So with the access scheme, one issue that we see, especially on sailboats with carrier sense, is you have the smaller antennas way up on the mast. It's more impacted by the atmospheric noise. So you might not be transmitting all the time, and it's based on just the noise level, and the lesser power isn't getting it out there. We don't see that on power boats as much. It seems to be more with the sailboats out there. But on the other one actually schedules a time before it's getting ready to transmit. So it pings a satellite, it schedules the time, and then it transmits. Where the carrier sense, it's not pre-scheduling that open time slot. It's just pinging. If there's an open time slot, it gets it. If there's no open time slot, it waits until the next ping frequency. So depending on if you're in an extremely busy port, Newport, Rhode Island right now, there's a max. This is the busiest time of year with transient big ships in Newport. If you have a carrier sense, you might not be pinging all the time in Newport. So the SOT DMA is much more efficient. And then we look at the transmission rates. So this is where we see a really big difference. So every 30 seconds with your carrier sense, and then when we jump over to the one that's highlighted in red, we're pinging every 5, 15, or 30 seconds, and it's based on the vessel speed. So if you're going over 23 knots, you're transmitting your position every 5 seconds. Between 14 and 23, 15-second transmissions. Between 2 to 14 knots, you're down to 30-second transmission. And then once you're below 2 knots, you're only transmitting every 3 minutes. So in terms of you transmitting your position and also receiving that data, much more reliable, much faster transmissions, much more just safer overall too. Now we look at, there's a lot of options out there that are, under $500 that only receive AIS. They're low-cost alternatives. These can be effective mainly for collision avoidance. It's all included in your VHF radio typically. If you integrate it with an MFD, you will get those AIS targets on your MFD, whether it's on your radar or your chart. And there's also some handheld VHFs that offer this. You know, on that bottom right, that's an ICOM handheld. It's great, but at the end of the day, you're looking at a 1-inch by 1-inch LCD. So if you're using that for safety avoidance in extreme situations, probably not going to be what you want to rely on 100%. Now, when we look at internet-based AIS, you know, we get asked this question all the time, like, oh, I just have my iPad, I have Starlink on the boat, and I'm just watching, you know, I'm just watching for other vessels when I'm doing these crossings. What people don't realize, especially, you know, if you're out in the Gulf, if you're, you know, offshore, you still need to have a satellite transmit over you to pick up your position. That satellite still needs to go over a land base to retransmit your position back. So there might be an hour or two lag time before that boat actually updates. So if you're using that internet-based, you know, marine traffic, predict wind, over the horizon AIS, and you're looking at that vessel, where that vessel is, that might have been where it was 2 hours ago. So if you're relying solely on this, that's why we say on the bottom here, this should not be considered for watch purposes. Internet-based AIS, it's great to pull up when you're on land and you see a cool ship and you want to know what it is. It's really, even when you want to test your AIS, we always say the best way to test your AIS is to hail another AIS vessel and make sure that they can see you and you can be seen. And the reason being is because of that lag time from the over-the-air going to these internet-based applications. I can vouch for, you know, I'm up in Rhode Island. I see a lot of cool, we have a lot of the windmill boats coming up and we see them all the time, and I click on them and I see them. But again, we're looking at a Class A vessel versus Class B. So, but so now when we integrate radar and AIS, there's some really cool stuff here. So if we look right on the right-hand side of that photo, you can see your vessel's in the middle, and we have a vessel almost immediately at 12 o'clock. You have your yellow vessel AIS icon, and then you have the outer circular ring. That outer circular ring is telling us that we have not only locked on via AIS, we've locked on by radar. Instead of showing 2 targets, we've merged them down into 1. That red dot right next to the 83, that's another target, most likely a buoy, because it's not appearing yellow as it was coming. It would appear yellow if it had movement and was coming at us. So much cleaner way to see when you're looking at AIS merged with a radar target. When you look at the vessel on the right, that's off at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. See how we lost the yellow circle on the outer edge? That vessel just dipped behind a landmass. We are no longer pinging them via radar. We're only pinging them via AIS. Because we're locked on already AIS, you see the entire trail of that vessel and you see where it's actually heading. So really cool to be able to merge that technology and still monitor, track something, even though you lost it on one, but you gained it on the other. And then now when we look at Doppler, so with Doppler, we track everything and we can color coordinate it. We have advanced features now that auto track, and you know, if you powered up a radar 15 years ago, you'd have to do a lot of you'd have to do a lot of tweaking to get it to really perform in all the different situations. All the radars now, especially the new ones, they all have, you know, pre-tuned modes that are pretty 98% solid right out of the box, where you'll never have to really tweak anything. The only one that I find I have to tweak these days is my rain clutter. Based on how heavy it's raining, I have to turn that up or down just to eliminate the rain. So when we look at, ours is called Velocity Track. That's just our trademark name, but really it's just your Doppler with these pulse compression solid state radars. before you needed a big magnetron radar, you needed to have other components. Wasn't very well out there. Now these things with the solid state makes it super easy. So you can see we have a vessel in a harbor and they're getting ready to leave. These targets on the right hand upper quadrant are both yellow. They're moving. What this is showing me is the direction they're moving is going to put them potentially at a close pass to us. And then you'll see their AIS data on the right. Those aren't AIS targets. Those are still far away. But when it comes to situational awareness, it's a great safety measure to further reduce your risk of a collision. And we can take it a couple steps further too. So now we're looking at highlighting moving targets in radar, and we're looking at radar overlay on a chart. So on your left and your right, these are the same exact images, just one is radar overlay on your chart. On the right, it's the actual radar screen. So we look at it, our vessel's in the middle here. It's kind of straight above where the VEL is in that gray chart. You'll see a target on the left. That target's moving. So it's turning up as yellow. And then we have a target up here. There's also a flag on there. I don't know what that flag is, but you can see the target right behind the flag. It's definitely moving. Then you'll see the other red stuff. So you can see that green buoy on the right, even though that's in front of us, it's appearing red because it's a fixed location. It's not moving. And this technology allows this machine to do that and put it on your screen so you can quickly interpret what you're looking at. We can change the color templates. So with this color template, with the green outline, the targets that are moving appear red. So people always ask like, oh, what do the colors mean? And you know, it's like it varies based on the template. So we try not to give specifics, but it's like your standard default template is this one. So as long as people have not changed the default, if you see something yellow, it's moving. A lot of people wouldn't go crazy. I very rarely see color templates changed. I don't know if you guys see it on all the vessels you guys are on, but this is where it gets really fun with weather mode and velocity track. So we're using that software to track movement and turn things yellow. So what we're looking at is a storm system in front of us. So at our 1 o'clock, you see the fixed red horizontal line in that yellow storm system. That's a landmass. So we're able to distinguish everything's moving around it except that's a landmass and that's not moving. And then we can take it a little bit further. So this is the intense rain. So it's moving now at a speed where it's picking up that velocity track and turn yellow. You can still see that landmass back there. And now here we're going to start, we change the settings where we're only looking at approaching only. So on the left-hand side, everything that just turned gray-blue, that's already past us. It's no longer a threat. This yellow system is still coming at us. So that's a further where you can kind of further tweak this to really pay attention to what is in front of you. And you can see here, here's the storm system. There's that massive land. And this is those settings where if it's off, it's going to show everything that's moving in yellow. If you're at normal, it's going to show, normal, it's going to show everything in yellow. And if you're in approaching only, it's only going to light up yellow on what's coming at you. So we look at the next slide with approaching only, and you'll see those two land masses. That rain system has moved off the landmass on the upper right-hand side. There's still a landmass over on the left. The yellow part is what's coming at us and is going to impact. And the storm system's right off our back and it's still appearing red. And then when we turn it off completely and just look at normal, instead of that storm that's already past us and it's kind of on our starboard side, that one, it's going to be blue-gray. And now the yellow is the only one that's coming at us. Excuse me, need a water. I misspoke. The blue is what's on our port side too. And that's where you can now make it clear. So it just makes it better to understand with the situational awareness with the radar technology that's out there. And this is the auto track feature that a lot of manufacturers are unlocking this, where it will automatically start tracking targets that are coming in within range. So you'll see this is right out of the box, just turned on auto tracker. You'll see the two vessels that are in front of us. We have one approaching a port. We already passed one on the starboard. You get your tracking lines, and you also showing a heading of the direction that it's going. Again, I've already mentioned this with ease of use. You have your harbor mode, offshore mode, weather mode, bird plus mode, MARPA with your watch targets, target symbology, and now we're also putting in the synthetic target trails. Most of the major manufacturers are giving you these uses. And when you look at the difference from harbor to offshore, all it's doing is increasing the RPM and how quickly that dome is spinning. When you go into offshore, it slows it down a little bit because it's putting more power. You want to be able to see further. And then you got your weather mode. Weather's spinning really quick. But the most common one folks are in is offshore. And then if they're going into busy harbors, they're spinning it up and going faster and going into the harbor mode. But a lot of folks don't even go into harbor mode. That's usually just unfamiliar harbors or tons of traffic around. But this is just really kind of talking about the how advanced dome radars have come over the last 10 years with the solid state. So most people would never think that a dome radar would get a 20, 42-mile nautical range. So on the left-hand side, you see the vessels in a marina. They have this thing spun up where they're showing 36 nautical miles on the right-hand side. And where this cursor is, right below the range on the upper right-hand side of this image, we're picking up targets that's about 42 miles past, because the outer ring here is 36, so that's further out at 42. Now this is dictated by the height of the radar. I couldn't tell you that formula off the top of my head, but the height of your radar dictates how far it can see because of the curvature of the Earth. But pretty impressive, because 15 years ago, we would not be able to get 20, 30 mile range out of a dome radar. Now what we're seeing in performance out of dome radars is equal to what we're seeing in big open array radars back in the day, which is pretty cool. So in here, just kind of already touched upon harbor mode. This is everything's in auto. It's showing you the vessel heading. It already picked it up. So because we have the outer yellow, we know it's an AIS target, and we know we're tracking it now with the AIS and also radar. We've merged those icons into one. And you can see it's giving you your warnings on the right-hand side that vessel, the CPA is going to be fairly close to our bow. That outer ring is at a half a mile, so it's saying we're probably going to be crossing within about a quarter mile. Just ultimate situational awareness, and this is all on auto, no tweak settings here. So CMAP, that's our brand. I don't want to go too deep into here. A lot of people probably use Navionics. What people don't realize is a funny story. CMAP and Navionics, they started with there were two Italian partners. They got into a fight. One went on to create Navionics. One went on to create CMAP. CMAP was sold to Boeing. Boeing kind of parked it for a bunch of years, and then we eventually acquired it. Whereas Navionics really, in the mid to late 2000s, really went into crowdsourcing, went into the applications. CMAP, we bought it. Took a while to get it back up to speed. If you asked me 5 years ago, we were selling displays with Navionics cards in them. Now we don't. Garmin bought them. They're kind of blocking a little bit of, they're not playing 100% nice like they used to. So Ray Marine bought their own company. But if you ask me what's better, it's really look at where you're navigating and where your home waters are. And you can go on Garmin's website, you can do a chart explorer, you can do it on a CMAP explorer, you can look and see who has better data. There's really no 100%, this one is 100% better. We all do things a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, we all do things very similarly as well. So with your overlay data, we have our Genesis social map. This is our crowdsource. You're actually scanning the bottom. You're pulling that info also from other people. This is similar to Garmin's active caption. You have your bottom composition, vegetation lines, and then you have your satellite overlay. It's all based on the level chart you have, because you have your base entry level chart, and then you have your higher end chart. So for example, for us, you need to have a reveal chart that's equivalent to the Platinum Plus with Garmin. That's what gets you the satellite overlay and then the relief shading. So this next one here is a quick little video of what we're showing here is basically your shader relief. Now we've purchased a lot of this it came from government scans. We've scanned the bottom ourselves. This is actually 3D real scans of the ocean floor. See if we can, so you can zoom in. That's real data of what that ocean floor looked like in 3D. So that's with our relief shading. Garmin has the same thing with the Navionics. This just goes over, we have our CMAP companion app, we have a B&G app, and we have a Simrad app. Your free stuff gives you basically, the only real difference with premium is you get your satellite overlay, you get your anchoring alert, and then you also have the ability to download for offline use. So if you're going to an area where you don't have good cell coverage, you can download it. With our application, you can sync it up to MFD. You can export, import your waypoints, your routes, very similar to what you do with Navionics if you guys use Navionics. And you can also do Navionics and upload and download back to your device or up to the cloud. And gives you the ability to actually plan your routes, plan your points of interest, do a lot of planning from the luxury of your own couch or kitchen table instead of having to do it on the spot when you get on your vessel. This just shows you, this is our, a lot of people don't realize we also have this appchart.cmap.com. This allows you to make routes from your PC. And once you sign in, you can load these to the cloud. You can sign into your Simrad or B&G display. You can sync it into that, or you can sync it right into your app on your mobile device. But this is really helpful. A lot of delivery folks I've talked to over the years, they use this, and it exports out in GPX waypoints, which GPX waypoints are pretty much the industry standard. They're what we use, they're what Garmin uses, they're what Ray Marine uses. So a lot of times you can actually export this and put it into another competitor device too. So this isn't exclusive just to Simrad or B&G. No Garmin it will work on. It will work on Ray Marine. I'm not sure about Furuno, but it's a nice free option to create routes if you ever need to. So, and with that, thank you all very much. Really appreciate the time. There's a lot of data. If anyone has questions,
we do have a few in the chat that I'll read to you, and I'm encouraging everybody to please enter any of your questions. And I had a couple of myself as well. So one of the first questions is from Amy. Can you describe the difference between using the CMAP chart and the Navionics chart on a B&G MFD?
So as far as operational, there is essentially no difference. They will both operate the same way. However, you have to have the Navionics card in the B&G units in order to sync the devices. And Navionics requires you to have an active account with them. So you have to register the card in order to use it. And then you have to have access to the app and you have to have them all synced together. We started preloading any of our displays you purchase today. come preloaded with our equivalent of a CMAP Discover card, which is all of North America. And you don't have to register. You essentially just have to sign into a CMAP app. You don't have to register your card to use it first. And as far as like syncing them up, it's just a matter of hitting the button on the B&G app and syncing it to the application that you're using, whether it be Navionics or CMAP. Our next level up with our paid version, that's where I believe Navionics, it's just all in, like you have to pay for it in order to use it. With us, we have a paid version, and that just gives you the ability to download these maps for offline use, or to use the shader relief or the sat imagery.
Okay.
But good question.
All right. She has another one. Is there any way to compute the current, like the blue tide arrow, if your boat speed isn't registering?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Is there any way to compute the current meaning it's often a blue tide arrow. I saw a lot of those last week when I was on a boat with B&G. If your speed or boat speed isn't registering. So can you compute the current?
If we don't have speed, I don't believe so. I could be wrong. So if you guys see our B&G booth at the Annapolis Boat Show, please stop by. We exhibit there. We don't exhibit at the Power Show. But I believe that's one of the things. If we don't have the position and we don't have our speed, we're not going to be able to calculate that current.
So she's asking, you can't substitute speed over ground for the boat speed?
You could, but I'm assuming like if that wasn't working, then if we had speed over ground, that could be a way.
Okay.
Then we would have that. I mean, we would have to have that data, whether it be COG or SOG. Like we would have to have something to compute that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So that's a good one. If any of these questions, if you could send them to me, I could actually follow up and get you 100% answers on anything I'm not sure about too.
Great. Awesome. All right, another one. This one's from Brian Morgan. Question about bathymetry depth offered. How often is it updated, especially in the ICW where the shoals are pretty dynamic? And I probably screwed up the pronunciation of that.
I don't know where the ICW is, but I know some other areas where we get that question a lot, especially with shifting sandbars. Typically, we can't update it quick enough for those areas. We don't have a set time to update it. So where, we get nor'easters up here, and like Nauset is a really bad one off Cape Cod, that you get a nor'easter and it can punch through and create a new inlet. It might take us 6 to 10 months, if not a year and a half, to remap that area, because half the time too, we can't get in and scan it quick enough, or get in there. We need to wait until typically a harbor master or Coast Guard goes in and actually puts new markers up so we know where we can navigate. Back to the question, there's not a set science to it. If it's something that we know is drastic, very important, we will go especially get it scanned quicker than more, but it really depends on how many people are in that impacted area, how drastic is the change, and how readily accessible and safe it is to get in there to rescan.
Okay.
But we do make a chart explorer on our website that we update every time we do updates. So I always say it's a free chart explorer. Check on that and compare it to what you personally know about the areas. That's
cool. All right. From Dean, can you clarify if Navico has changed the internal operating system to a Droid-based operating system, as working in the IT industry and having to do cybersecurity audits? What is Navigo doing to assure the cyber integrity of the chart plotter operating systems?
He probably knows more than I do about cyber and that, but I can answer the Droid. So we are in the middle of transition. So we had our Navico operating software, which is always called NOS. And now we have our Neon, which is our Android-based. We don't have the Android-based portfolio complete yet, so we're riding with two. So with B&G, we have our Vulcan, we have our Zeus 3S, and we have our big glass helm. Those are our NOS operating legacy systems. They're all going to stay current at least through 2026. And then we have our new one, which started with our Zeus S, which is our entry level. And we just came out with our Zeus SR, which is the next one up. What we don't have is our big all glass helms. So you kind of know what we're coming out with next now. Same thing with a Simrad. We're just missing out on our big all glass helms. The cyber security part of that, so I can't even speak on that. I could ask our product team how they're blocking this out, but I do know, like, you don't have to connect your devices to the Wi-Fi. So if it's not connected to an open network, it would be a question of how something comes in, and you probably know more about that than I do, being you're involved in that on a day-to-day. But I can ask around. That'd be a good one to ask about.
He also had another question. Dean had the question concerning the software supply chain automated update and what is in place to avoid a SolarWinds type cyber event of the software updates.
Wow. So first off, I recommend doing all your software updates with an SD card. There's two reasons. One, if you're doing it via Wi-Fi, especially in a public marina, the Wi-Fi is an unstable network. If that file gets compromised while you're downloading it, it can risk damaging your machines, your radar, whatever you're doing that software update. It's much more efficient, quicker to just download your updates to a micro SD based on your home, so you know you have a really good internet connection, and then you're just plugging in that SD card or micro SD card and downloading it there. I know our newer Neon-based software, we actually put expanded Wi-Fi modules in to help increase the download speed, and that will download the software first before it uploads the software to the machine. And after it downloads it, it rescans it to make sure that file didn't get corrupted. So that one is the Droid stuff is the first time where we say, you know what, you can do it over the air, not nearly as risky as the older stuff. And there's that secondary failsafe where it downloads first, rescans it, and won't let that update go through if it finds anything wrong with the file. I don't know how solar flares impact stuff like that, but does that help at all?
I hope so. He said thank you. Okay, anybody else have questions? I'm going to ask my two. Earlier, before you started talking, and not everybody was logged on yet, I was talking to you about my experience last week being on my friend's sailboat with her B&G, and the AIS alarm keep going off because she had it on and she had a small distance for the CPA. And so we turned it off and life got really good and we could actually use the VHF, which is kind of important when you're out there. What are some common, and you said that was kind of like a common issue. What are some of the other common issues that are like troubleshooting, like something that maybe you hear a lot about that we could all learn from and try to avoid?
I mean, NEMA networking, that's probably one of the biggest issues out there. NEMA is great, standardized between us, Raymarine, Garmin. The downside is it can cause really weird gremlins in the system. So false button pushes, screens that are getting paused, power drops, especially when you look at Triton screens or instrument screens that are also relying on power from their NEMA supply. But the other thing too is NEMA, you have your terminators on each end. If you have one issue with, you could have one failed T and all of a sudden it's not ohming out correctly, and it will cause weird issues throughout the system. And they're like, my MFD is acting up, and it's like, well, it's actually not that. Check your NEMA connection. If most people have voltmeters on their boat, you can take a NEMA cable, cut it in half, take the white and the blue, and you'll have one for your right hand side, you'll have one for your left hand side of your backbone. You can ohm that out. If you don't have 60 ohms in each side of that, on that white and the blue, that tells you you have an issue in your NEMA network, and it tells you actually where to look. So we got involved with one last year where it was the whole system was crashing, and when we started testing the NEMA backbone, it was all over the place. And then I was testing each individual T, and then when I got to the T for the rudder feedback, I said, wow, this is interesting. As soon as this is the issue here, and then they remembered that they burnt out an underwater light, and the NEMA cable ran by the underwater light. And when I found it, it had exposed wires, and that's what was causing the entire system to crash. So NEMA does really weird things. That one that you mentioned, the TCPA alert, that's really common. The other one is that will keep triggering or telling you no MMSI unless you put an MMSI in, so it will always throw an alarm. Super easy to get an MMSI. You can do it right through Boat US. Most installers won't tell you how to program an MMSI, but if you're savvy enough, you can figure it out. I legally can't even tell you how to do it because you actually have to be FCC certified.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's helpful. We have another one in the chat. Can you discuss issues of AIS reception, issues with reduced range of AIS reception versus coax, increased RF noise in the cable raceways?
So I think a lot of that comes back down to the two different distinctions with Class B AIS. We'll go back to that slide real quick because there's a very big power difference between the two. Yeah, so when we look at self-organizing and then we look at the carrier sense, a lot of the carrier sense is much more common out there, and we have seen it, especially with BNG, and it's specific to sailing with carrier sense. With that, height is getting much more impacted with the atmospheric noise, and it's not transmitting at all. We've seen it be hours where it actually got a solid transmission, where the SOTDMA one, much more reliable. Plus, it's actually getting that, it's reserving a spot to transmit before it transmits. Whereas the carrier sense, if that spot isn't available, it just skips and goes to the next one. Does that kind of touch upon what you're talking about?
Dean, I'll ask you did that help? Because it wasn't my question. And I'll wait for him to answer. And we're coming up on our time. He said he's finding issues with RF interference.
RF interference.
In the cable raceways.
Yeah. Interesting.
And
can you send that one to me too?
Yes. So our webmaster is copying and pasting these questions into a Word doc so that we can send them to you. So we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we're coming up on our time. So just real quickly, the last question that I thought about was, is there anything that you think is often overlooked and you wonder why the heck aren't people using that feature? Is there anything that just sort of pops to mind? I mean, they pay for all this stuff, but why aren't they using XYZ? Is there anything that just comes to mind?
It's a good one because people ask me, like, how do I know what I'm looking at with my radar? Because I just turned it on when I was in a storm 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
I'm like, well, was the last time you turned it on before that? I'm like, well, I haven't. It's like,
oh my God.
Use that radar every day. Use it when it's sunny out so you can watch and see what targets look like in clear conditions, because when you need that radar in inclement conditions, you want to trust it. You want to know what you're looking at. You want to understand the different targets. So radar, 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 all day on that one. Have that thing on every time you're running your boat, especially daylight, and be looking at it to understand what the targets look like.
That's great. That's awesome. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So
Joe. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. If you can stop sharing, I'll share my screen for the last little bit here. And it's just been really, this has been awesome. I'm so glad we record these because there are things I want to go back and re-listen to. So that's also really good. I really appreciate it. The amount of information you shared is just, staggering. And again, really appreciate you sharing both your expertise and your passion, because this really matters to you. And we can tell just from the way you've talked about everything. We will get back to you with some of these questions,
Absolutely.
so that you can, and we also will take that and we summarize some of this for our newsletter. So we'll also be posting that, your answers there. You're getting a lot of thank yous into the chat, which is good. And I wanted to just then share with everyone, just remind everyone that we've got 2 programs coming up in September and October. We have 2 tours coming up in September and November, a class for CPR in September, and then our annual business and dinner meeting on December 1st. So really appreciate all of you attending. And again, many thanks to Joe. And we will be posting a summary of this in our next newsletter, and also hopefully getting some of these questions answered. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Everyone have a good rest of the evening.